Our guest today is the co-founder and CEO of ConCreates. He identifies value by tapping into personal experiences and creative energy and combining them with data analytics, technology, and on-the-ground networks to develop lasting business solutions. Our guest's story of success is informed by life lessons obtained during his journey from the streets of Los Angeles to the criminal justice system, to his recent path marked by professional accomplishments, including mentoring, formal education, and impassioned problem solving. I'd like to welcome Vincent Bragg to the Humane Experience podcast.
All right.
What's going on?
Oh man, it's good to be here, man. I appreciate you having me.
For sure. We're happy to have you here. We do a little geographical check-in. Okay. Right now we're at our mobile studio here in Manhattan Beach, California. Mm-hmm. But tell the people, where did you grow up?
Originally, I'm from Watts, California. So, anybody from the LA area, you should know. Watts is not one of the greatest environments to grow up in, but right. I appreciated being from there, and my grandparents actually adopted me and my sisters, and saw fit that they moved us out of there, and we ended up in Palmdale. So okay. Palmdale, you can say I grew up in Palmdale.
So you grew up in Palmdale, you went to high school up in Palmdale,
mm-hmm.
And then after you left high school, what kind of happened then?
Well, I think for me it was more about high school, you're still kind of trying to find yourself and really just, pick your place in the world. And I think, moving to Palmdale, I always had like this identity crisis where it was like, I'm not black enough for the black kids, I'm not white enough for the white kids. So really just finding that particular space, right? Like, where do I fit in being someone who has an education, but also someone who has community ties in some of these neighborhoods that
right.
We come from.
Okay. Now, if you were going to summarize yourself in 30 seconds or less, how would you summarize Vincent?
For me, I think I could do it less than 30 seconds. I think I am a humane warrior.
Okay, humane warrior. Love it. Now, we kind of go through things, and I definitely feel that you're a creative entrepreneur, you're a creative person. You promote ConCreates, which is your company. Tell us a little bit about ConCreates, how it came to be, mm-hmm. and where you headed next with ConCreates.
Right, so ConCreates essentially is a creative agency. So we do marketing, branding, PR solutions for some of the biggest brands on the planet and startups. The unique thing about ConCreates, I think the thing that makes us stand out in a sea of creatives is we crowdsource ideas and strategies for campaigns, commercials, things like that, from a network of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated men, women, and children across the country. So our goal is to help pay back restitution if it's owed. We want to teach a transferable skill set, so when the men and women come out of prison, they can say, hey, I'm the guy that worked on X, Y, and Z campaign, or I'm the woman who helped rebrand X, Y, and Z company, and actually get employment either with my agency partners, or the brands themselves as creatives.
And how did this idea come to be, and why are you so passionate about it?
So I actually went to federal prison. Okay. I was indicted for conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute 15 to 50 kilograms of cocaine. I was sentenced to 121 months in federal prison, and during that journey, I just became what I like to say, a monster, right? I studied law, corporate law, real estate law, read over 450 books. I wrote 3 books, and I was literally in prison with some of the most creative minds that I've ever seen in my life. And I was locked up with the founder of an underwear company based out of Culver City, California. And we were able to help that company go from doing about $50,000 in sales a month to $934,000 with only 2 campaigns. Now they're doing like $6.8 million in sales, $100 million company, and we were the breakout campaigns that they had. But we didn't get paid the way I thought we should have.
Got it.
And not because he was a slime ball or anything like that. It was just our buddy. We didn't really know what we had. But it sparked something in me, right? It let me know, like, yo, there's a business here. We can do something as a business here. So in federal prison, given the fact that you have like good behavior or an address in that district, every 18 months you can put in for a transfer to go anywhere in the country to another prison. So that's what I did. I'm like, oh, you got 24 years left? I want you to go to the South. You got 15 years left? Midwest, all up and down the West Coast, all over the country, and find other people who think like us, other creatives who are looking for another outlet. And so I built a network from the inside out.
All right. And how much time did you end up serving?
Yeah, so I ended up winning my appeal on something called 2255, which is ineffective assistance of counsel. I was able to prove that my lawyers were just lying to me in order to get more money out of me. So I did, in the total, 5 years, 1 month, 22 days. March 1st, 2016, I was released from federal prison.
Okay. And how did you come up with the idea while you were in prison to start the network, to think big enough to think about the whole country?
Mm-hmm.
And then how were you able to implement that so that it was successful?
Well, I think it just kind of came from being around people from different parts of the country. So, having good behavior isn't one of the ways that you can be transferred to different prisons. So, say for instance, you're from Boston and you get into a riot in a prison on the East Coast. Well, as your way of being punished, what they'll do is send you to the moon, right? So it'll be guys from Boston, from North Carolina, South Carolina, all over the country, here in San Pedro at Terminal Island, which is one of the prisons that I was at, or in Lompoc, which is one of the federal prisons I was at. But it would be people from everywhere in these prisons. So kind of realizing that each one of these individuals has an insight, right? So they have an experience being from the places that they are. And, just me being one of those people who understand marketing, I realized that these are some of the populations that a lot of these brands would like to connect with, but don't necessarily have access to, or the diversity within their company to even penetrate into some of these markets. So in federal prison, it's like guys either are one of two things. They either want to be a better person or they are trying to figure out how to be a better criminal. So, with that being said, we provide that opportunity for you to be a better person rather than a better criminal.
Got it. Like it. I read where you said that self-awareness was the biggest lesson you learned while you were in prison. Why was that the case?
Well, there's plenty of, things that I could point to, but I think the most essential to that is just realizing the potential that I had, right? And who I was. Like at one point in my life, I thought that all I would ever be was a drug dealer. I thought that was my only option. But like I said, being around all of these different people from all of these different backgrounds, people were able to kind of put things in perspective for me. So one of the examples I like to use is one of my guys in my network, he was a stock exchange agent. So his job was to audit companies to make sure they were in compliance and they were doing things above board. He got caught in a sting, taking bribes. Companies were basically paying him to say things were, or they were compliant, or things were above board. And he approached me one day and he was just like, yo, I heard about you, you were just in arbitrage. And I'm like, what the hell is arbitrage? You know what I mean? Right. And he was like, well, arbitrage is basically like, this is his example, but you buy rice in China at $1 a pound and you sell it in Jordan for $5 a pound. And for me, it made sense as the parallel between what I was doing in the drug industry versus what people do in the commodity space, and how that could be applicable in all these different cases. So that's how we actually start, by onboarding our talent. Is I think society has this thing where they're like, oh, if they're in prison, they deserve to be in prison, or lock them up and then we forget about them. But not realizing that we're kind of locking up a workforce, right? And so we onboard by starting with the crime. One of my guys successfully robbed 27 banks. I don't look at him as a bank robber, I look at him as a strategist. And I know brands that will pay him better than a doctor per year for the title brand strategist. So how do we take someone whose natural raw talent is to create a plan and execute it successfully 27 times,
right,
to do that for a brand successfully 27 times?
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of like the...
I like it. Yeah, very interesting. You mentioned that when you were in prison, you read over 450 books. Why is reading so important to you?
For one, I didn't like to read growing up. Like my grandmother, being from the South, actually coming up in a time where, racism was really blatant, right? It wasn't like it is now. Like it still exists, but it's like, we don't talk about it. Or if you do, say something racist or become racist, like it's immediately shut down. It's like this whole outcry. But at one point, this was like society's norm. It was socially acceptable to have a divide. And being African American, we weren't allowed to read. So my grandmother used to make me read to her on Saturday. She would while everybody's outside playing, she would make me stand up and read to her books, and I hated it. As a child, I hated it because I wanted to go play. Like I wanted to be a kid. And she used to always say, like, "Oh, you have a great speaking voice. Like people are going to listen to you one day." And so, I kind of rebelled against that. Didn't really like to read, and didn't necessarily have the time to do it either. So, going to prison just kind of sat me down and gave me the ability to like pick up a book. And then I read a book, and the diversity in thought that comes from reading just kind of sparked this thing, and then this thing, and then it's like other books are being referenced in these books, and I'm going to these different books, and I'm just devouring it, and the information just kind of helps me to change my way of thinking.
Definitely. People nowadays don't read. Like maybe people might read an average of one book a year, which is crazy. So I'm a reader as well too. We're going to get to your book recommendations a little later, but I'm really curious to see which books kind of still resonate with you now.
Yeah.
Next question is, based on your experience, and you work with numerous thousands of creatives, what's important for creative professionals such as yourself, myself, to succeed in today's business environment? So
one of the things that I think is super important is diversity and inclusion, right? And I know that's like a buzz term, right? People use it all the time, and it's a way for people to check off a box and say, we're doing this to be inclusive of this particular population, or we're diversified because we have 2 Black people on our team, right? And for me, I'm like, well, mass incarceration isn't exclusive to Black people or Latinos. Like it's a human thing. It's not. It's just not exclusive to one particular group of people, even though some people are, incarcerated more than others when you look at it like that. But having different minds, like one of my testimonies from one of my clients, his biggest thing about my company is I can put 1,000 minds on one problem, and that is valuable to any company out there. So when you think about, hey, we want to talk to a Latino demographic, right? But a Latino here in LA isn't the same as a Latino in Texas, right? And so how do they communicate with the group of Texas Latinos without, being offensive or anything like that? And we provide that unique perspective and insight, which is real world experience and an authentic voice.
Right. Now, I understand what you mean, but just for people who might not understand what you mean, how is a Latino in LA different from a Latino in Texas, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, they're 2 different experiences, right? So when you think about how Latinos here in LA, it's more gang related, right? They have like a more hip hop culture to it, but there it's more of a family. Traditional family values because it's in the South, right? But it's also, it shares a border with Mexico. So
right.
It's just a different mentality
okay.
When you think about those two groups. Just like even an African American from the South has a different view than a New York African American.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you were going to share, you don't have to pick, like, I don't want to say favorite, but one of your most meaningful clients or fellow inmates that you've helped succeed in the business world once they were released, what comes to mind?
I mean, for me, it's so many, right? So I really love to talk about the guy who successfully robbed 27 banks. And the reason why I love to talk about him is because he's a guy from South Central, gang member, who was an athlete, who was super highly intelligent, had ADHD, and people just kind of felt like we don't know how to control this individual. We don't know how to channel that particular energy. So for him, I mean, he's still in prison, but he'll attest to it when he comes home. I was able to kind of help sit him down when other people can't really help him to channel that energy and his focus, because he doesn't even really understand, why am I full of all this energy and why do I have all these thoughts going in all these different directions? And for me to present him with a creative brief from a brand actually sits him down and inspires all of these different thoughts from his experience, whether it's movies or just the gang lifestyle, whatever it is that he's experienced. He is one of my I won't say proteges. He's one of my greatest self-fulfilling connections with a human being, is the fact that he will attest, and he says it to me all the time. I appreciate you, helping me cultivate this creative energy that I have.
Right. How much time does he have left?
He actually comes home in March, so he got 20 years in federal prison, and he's done about 17 years so far, and he's finally being released.
So it's January now when we're recording, so he's got a couple months, and then he'll be back out in the world.
Yeah, and he's already lined up to work with the underwear company that we initially, came up with the strategies for. And he has a position there, which is great, because we get to actually help foster that transition from prison into a working environment.
Okay, if you're going to look at your career and figure out when the turning point was, what comes to mind?
When the turning point for me was?
Yes, of your career, or you can say life as well, whichever you choose to answer the question.
Well, yeah. So for me, there's several different turning points, right? But I believe going to prison kind of brought all of those things together. So one, we talked about books. One of the books that I really enjoyed was Mastery, right? Mastery by Robert Greene, who also wrote the 48 Laws of Power, Art of Seduction, 33 Strategies of War. But in that book, it talks about an apprentice phase, and it talks about like an apprentice back in the day, it would take like 7 years or 10,000 hours to become a blacksmith. You would sit up under a guy who worked with metal, and you would figure out that thing, and you would be considered a master.
Right.
But he makes the parallel to show you how people like Darwin and all these other individuals who ended up accomplishing something major hadn't started out with that in their mind or in their vision for their career, and through the experiences of having odd jobs and doing other things kind of led to that thing that we know that person for. And I feel like prison is that thing for me.
Interesting. Why do you love what you do?
Because I don't believe that I have to step on someone's neck in order to get ahead, right? So I believe that making money and doing good aren't separate things. I believe that they can be intertwined, and this is my way of doing that, right? So I get a chance to make lots of money. I get a chance to not exploit the individuals that are making 12 cents an hour working for some of the brands that you don't even know benefit off of prison labor. And then I get to help these individuals realize their full potential and help them to really reintegrate into society. So That's why I love it.
And how did you develop that perspective? Because that's probably takes a while to kind of work to get there. Because by nature, we're pretty competitive people growing up, sports, school, everything like that. How were you able to kind of hone that mindset?
Selling drugs. I mean, when it's really all said and done, like, people have this image of what an inmate is, right? It's already kind of been predetermined when you hear inmate or prisoner, right? You have these images. Like, one of the things, and I'll get to my point in a second, but one of the things that was really funny to me when I first went to prison, I would talk to women, that I knew, and the first thing that they would ask me is, do people get raped in prison? And I'm like, where are you getting this from? Like, you know what I mean? It's not like a rape fest in here. It's not that. It's not even something that. It's not even a mentality. It's not. It's actually something that's outlawed, right? It's like me. I'm a man, right? I'm not. You can't do things like that to me without having, some form of retaliation from other men who feel like that shouldn't happen to them as well, right? So I say that to just kind of say, as a drug dealer, right? You think guns and violence, and I never had to carry a gun when I was doing what I did, and I always was, maybe I didn't have the proper way of articulating it, but my core belief has always been collaboration over competition. So, I think the reasons why I was so successful in the drug space, obviously I didn't tell you I made almost $20 million in the drug space. Right. So when I say I was pretty successful,
that's successful.
As far as financially in that space, but it's because I teamed up with people. I didn't just come to your town or your city or your neighborhood and set up shop. Like, I literally went to the people who ran those communities and said, I make them an offer. Like, this is what I want to do. I want you to be a part of it. And we worked in unison. It wasn't, I'm the boss and you guys work for me, or it wasn't that type of deal. So I think with that mentality versus like going to prison and seeing a collective, they kind of just went hand to hand.
Excellent. Then on the flip side, what is something that scares you?
That's probably, I'm not afraid of anything. I think the scariest thing I ever heard in my life was the United States of America versus Vincent Bragg Jr. I think after that, nothing is really scary.
Yeah. Now, I still think what you do, like you were a part of Defy Ventures as well. So your industry is not that crowded, but it's getting to be more popular. So how do you, and you might have already answered this with the collaboration over competition, but how do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from other people who are trying to do similar things as you were doing?
Right, so let me address the Defy Ventures thing, because I'm such an advocate for Defy Ventures, because I actually joined Defy Ventures when I was released from prison. So when I was in prison, ConCreates wasn't like my first choice of business to do when I came out of prison. It was something I wanted to do, right. But joining Defy Ventures, they helped me to cultivate like the business model. They, linked me up with different mentors and people in the corporate space, which my natural skill set is to network and to make connections. And being in prison, I realized I never really had real connections. So you hear a lot about people when they go to prison, like, oh, people turn their backs on me. And, so at one point I was bitter about that, right? There was people that I took care of. I took care of their families and paid bills when they needed money and things like that. And then nobody would come to visit me or nobody would write me letters. But then I had to, kind of look inside of myself and say, well, why is that? Because not everybody that I interacted with in life could just be scandalous like that, right?
Right.
So then I had to evaluate it. Well, most people probably hung out with me because of the things that I provided. And when I go to prison, they think there's no more money, the lifestyle is over, so on to the next, right? So it just helped me to realize I didn't have real connections with real people, you know what I mean? And so that was one of the things I kind of set myself up for while I was in prison, is how do I actually connect with a human being on a real level in order to inspire loyalty and those things. So I'm not sure if I answered the question.
You kind of did, because you talked about how do you distinguish yourself from other people who might be doing similar things. And what you said is that you really rely on your skill of creating connections and being authentic.
Right, and just to elaborate a little more about how do I stand out is, first off, collaboration over competition. So I don't go to a creative agency that exists out there in the world and say, I can do what you do better, right? Only thing that I really can offer is a different perspective. So when you think about the creative space and you think about some of these huge creative agencies, I'll give you a better example. H&M, the coolest monkey in the jungle. It was a catastrophe, right? If you guys don't want that to happen, then you should collaborate with me, right? Because we're gonna save you money and media buys and everything that comes along with it, the production, everything, by allowing us to just look at your project and say, no, this is offensive. You know what I mean? This doesn't connect. Or Pepsi and Kendall Jenner, this doesn't connect authentically with this group of people because we represent this group of people. And for people who are using that buzzword, diversity and inclusion, this is a way for you to also check off that box. And at the same time, your social corporate responsibility, you can check that off, and we'll actually help you increase your revenue by giving you some of the most out-of-the-box ideas the world has ever seen.
For some people who maybe have trouble making connections and being authentic, but they want to improve, what advice would you give them in terms of improving the way they make authentic connections in the world?
Go to the place, right? Like, and this, I think this is a huge thing about our political climate. It's you have people, and I'm not advocating or discriminating against any political stance, right? Because I believe I sit somewhere in the middle on all of this stuff. But I just like to make an example with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was successful at his election. We can say yes, he tampered with the voting and all of that. That to me is the smallest compound. What he did was he paid attention to a demographic of people whose voices were not represented in mainstream media, and he catered to that. Point blank period. Point blank period. So from a strategy or a marketing standpoint, I think it was brilliant, right? So now let's talk about this particular demographic. 70 to 100 million people in our country have a criminal record. That's 1/3 of our population that have a criminal record. So from a strategy standpoint, from a brand strategy standpoint, it behooves you to at least get the perspective of this particular population if you want to navigate in this space or continue to scale.
Okay, all right. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Yeah, I got indicted. That's my favorite failure. And the reason why I say that is because, and a lot of this stuff isn't, really like in my bio. Like I said, I was a drug dealer, so I'm really not, I'm really getting used to the idea of being completely transparent and people, peering into my life. But at one point in time, I actually owned and operated one of the first and largest internet radio stations in the world. I bought into a franchise of internet radio stations, and I took it from doing about 2.4 million listeners to over 4 million listeners in less than 2 years. So that's a natural skill set that I already have. So I come to the table with these skill sets even before I go to prison. But I live two different lives, right? So even though I'm really trying to, appear to the world as, this entrepreneur and this upstanding citizen, really my revenue is coming from, illegal or illicit activities. So by me going to prison, and the reason why it sets me up for success now is because now I'm not one of those CEOs that you look at and you're when something comes out in the public, oh, this person had an affair, or oh, Vincent Bragg got caught, saying something, that maybe the world wasn't ready to hear or whatever, it's almost like, well, you guys already know my flaws, right? I lead with my failure, and that's why I think it sets me up for success.
Well said, well said. As you kind of continue to ascend in your career, get more awards, more recognitions, you get to meet people like Sheryl Sandberg and work with very prominent people in Silicon Valley, you acquire more critics. How do you handle your critics, or your haters, as we call them?
I love them. I embrace them. I mean, honestly, I have like a really good team, right? And again, this is why I think people need to know about my company and what we do, because there's so many different parallels from this world that people are afraid to kind of talk about and address, as well as in the corporate world. So I was really successful in the drug space because I built a really good team, right? So as an example, right, I did this Silicon Valley tour with Defy Ventures, and we met with Sheryl Sandberg and Jeff Weiner of LinkedIn and all these, amazing people, right? So now we're at eBay, and, I'm talking to eBay, I'm pitching them, what we're doing at ConCreates. They love the concept, and I kind of get pulled to the side, like after everything's kind of over, and it's like, yo, we really like your company, but do you really think we're going to trust our brand to a bunch of convicts? And I'm like, yo, I don't have an answer for that. I never even thought that would be an issue. I thought you guys would see the social good in what we're doing and be on board. But let me get back to you. So I went out and got the best of the best, right? I went and got the global communications director from DraftKings. I went and got the former vice president of Edelman, the creative director from Discovery Channel, Tim Jones from 72 and Sunny, Facebook's lawyers. I went and got Fenwick and West, and I put them all in a committee and said, don't trust the convicts, trust the experts. Because now they're going to be the ones to vet the work, the quality, to make sure it's on brand, on message, on target. And you should rest assured that we're going to produce the best quality for you. So in saying that, building a team and it shields me from my haters. We have these conversations all the time. Like, what's the worst headline that we could receive, right? Like, some of these big brands are like, well, so who's working on the campaign, right? Is it pedophiles? Is it, murderers? Like, and all these things we never think of, right? Because I'm not looking at these people like everyone else is. So, that's the purpose of diversity. Having those different mentalities, to give us those perspectives allows me to address my haters, you know what I mean? Or, critics or whatever. So when it's all, I welcome it, because it just helps us to bulletproof what we're doing and strengthening our community and our culture and our company. So people feel safe. I mean, that's really what it all boils down to, is how do people feel safe psychologically and physically by working with people who have been incarcerated.
Speaking of teams, what do you feel is the key to building the most successful and strongest team possible?
Ego. Get outside of your ego for 1 second and realize you cannot do everything, especially Black entrepreneurs. I think even when I had the radio station, right, I didn't just have a radio station, it was a full-fledged media company where we, had studios and marketing, and we had all these departments, and it was a small group of people trying to do everything, right? And I think that was one of the reasons why we failed at that, is because we tried to do so many different things and we didn't do one thing really well. So it's really like looking at what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and finding people who are good at that, right? Like, I'm not good at finances. I'm just not. As much as I would like to say I can manage a budget, it's not my expertise. But I know that there's people out there who that's their jam, right? They get off on numbers and and balance sheets, and that's their thing, right? So how you have to find that person, and there's so many different platforms that allow you. I think LinkedIn is a very amazing platform for finding connections with people who are in that space or looking to volunteer and help in certain spaces where there is a social impact piece to it.
Reminds me of my favorite African proverb. One of my favorite African proverbs: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Same here.
Preach.
Same here. That's a part of our culture.
Great. Now, I still want to ask you this question because I'm curious if you have a different answer than what's expected. But tell us about the darkest time of your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
So, this is the thing that comes to me, right? So I'm in prison, and like I said, like when you're in prison, one of the things that you want is to feel like you're not in prison, right? So we do all of the things that we could possibly do to take our minds out of prison, right? And that's why ConCreates is so amazing, because you can actually see your work played out on television. You can see how you're affecting the world. So it's a good feeling. So I ended up swallowing a balloon, right? And it got stuck in my throat. And I couldn't swallow food. I couldn't drink water for 8 days. My kidneys failed. Like, I almost died. But the prison didn't care. They thought, hey, we have a drug bust or whatever. And so they put me in a cell for 8 days, no food, no water, because they thought I would pass the balloon or whatever. And like just on death's door, like really kind of put things in perspective for me, because it was like let's just say I do die, right? Then what will the world know me for? Like, what did I really do while I was here? And I think that's kind of what sparked everything, which was like, I have to do something, right? I can't just be a taker from mankind. Like, I have to contribute to society in some way, shape, or form. And so that it helped to shape the way I am now, or the way my thinking was just almost dying and really feeling like I hadn't accomplished anything, you know, as far as, okay, yeah, I made a bunch of money, you know what I mean? But no one's gonna remember that.
Right. Why did you swallow the balloon?
Because I wanted what was inside of it.
Yeah. Inside of it was?
I mean, that's irrelevant.
Okay.
That's irrelevant. But at that point in time, like that was my mentality. Like, I got the balloon, I swallowed it. Biggest, mistake or whatever, I could have made, but it also like helped me to kind of learn from my actions.
All right.
Up to that point.
Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
My grandfather. My grandfather was my grandparents. Let's say that, right? So my grandparents, for one, had been together since they were 11 years old.
Wow.
Selma, Alabama. My grandfather made a promise to my grandmother that he kept. He told her, I would take you out of this ghetto and we're gonna be successful. And he did. He moved to Chicago, worked for PBS, ended up getting a job here in California with NBC. So he was one of not only the first black cameraman, but the first cameraman to ever catch a baseball in super slow motion. He had like a technique that he used that all of the camera people, all of the networks would try to look over his shoulder.
Right.
He probably filmed every Olympics since I've been alive, traveled around. He was just, someone who came up in a time where, like I said, racism was real blatant, and my grandmother having the strength to stick with it, with him, and so for me they were very influential in my life.
What do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
I think my courage is what I find that most people I have so many friends that are just brilliant people, and it's like I think we're also beat down by naysayers and haters, just people who don't want to see you do better than them. I don't have that. Right? My grandmother taught me when I was growing up that I could do anything that I put my mind to, and I actually believed her. Like I believe that I can do anything. You know what I mean? So when I have an idea, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm out there. I'm trying to build a team and figure out how to make it happen. And some people have issue with that. Some people, a lot of my friends have issue with that as far as it being difficult for them to really just. I'm gonna quit my job and be an entrepreneur, or have the courage to do that.
How can people be more courageous? Because that's a very important trait that many people just kind of, as you say, just give up and just kind of tap out.
Man, I think, and it's one of them things. Like I don't want to say like this is the thing, right? I don't have the recipe to life. You know what I mean? But what works for me is like I said, I believe that statement, right? Like and this is something that we try to teach people is your belief system dictates your thoughts, right? Your thoughts dictate your actions dictate your outcome. So if you believe you can't do something, then your thoughts will reflect that, right? And if your thoughts reflect what you can't do, then your actions will do the same, and thus your outcome will give you that. So for me, I think it's just your belief system. You have to really wholeheartedly believe in what you're doing. Some people are opportunistic, right? So they're like, oh, it's a trend for me to be in this space, and they want to try to accomplish what they're seeing other people having success in, and they're failing at it, or they're measuring their success to other people, and you can't do that, right? So people ask me all the time, well, how will you measure success with ConCreates? And ConCreates isn't about how much money we make. It's not about how many campaigns we participate in. For me, I measure the success of ConCreates when my con-creators call me and tell me, hey, I went to apply for a job at Google and I told them I had criminal history, and they were like, well, tell me about it. They were interested in the skill set that particular crime had in the job description. Oh, you were a drug dealer? How many people did you manage? Well, guess what? We have a managerial position for you. We see that you're a good leader. If you could manage 23 people, we have a smaller team than that, but we have a position for you. So to me, I'm not trying to measure myself up to a $2 billion creative agency. It's not what I'm doing. So I just want to change the perspective of how people see people with criminal histories.
Yeah, definitely. Something you said earlier reminds me of a quote. I think it's Henry Ford who said, "Those who think they can and think they can't are both right."
Right.
So yeah. And when you were 21, you were here in LA, Palmdale.
21. Yeah. So I was just leaving and I moved to Atlanta when I was 21.
So when you talk to Vincent when he's in Atlanta, 21 years old, based on what you know now, what advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
Don't go back to California. At least not right now. Because that's what happened. Like I worked, at a steel plant, and I ended up cutting my hair, so I got the scar on my head right here. And that's kind of what started my drug dealing exploitation. Right? I'm like, I'm never working for no one again. Came here and then happened to run into a guy that's like, here, take 200 pounds of weed and see what you can do with it. So yeah, that's what I would tell myself.
Okay, that's great advice. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence would be, I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
So for me, my sentence would be collaboration over competition. I really believe in collaboration over competition. I believe me and you can exist in the same space because we offer two different perspectives that can drive something forward. So I just can't be a hater. I can't look at you and be like, oh, I can't bring him around my girl because he looked better than me. I can't do that. I'm like, yo, like I can see like if that's how I feel, then maybe I should explore that. You know what I mean? And yeah, like if you could take my girl because you look better than me, then that's not my girl. So why wouldn't I want to put that in the forefront now before I'm, buying rings and doing that? You know what I mean? So for me, collaboration over competition. I really, that's my sentence.
I love that perspective, and personally, I've been working on that like the last 3 or 4 years because I grew up competitive. Like I played competitive soccer all the way, all my life. So it's a work in progress, but I respect that, and I really appreciate your perspective. What is one new habit you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
Honestly, just changing the way I eat. Changing the way I eat, I think, is a really good habit because I just have more energy, right? Like I wake up, even if I sleep less, I still feel more rested than say if I slept for 9 hours versus 4, because I think I'm just putting better gas in my car, if that makes any sense.
What kind of specific changes have you made to your eating?
Well, for one, I don't eat any meat, so definitely a fan of Dr. Sebi. And that's one of the things that he kind of preached was like, being African, we didn't eat certain things. And when we came over here, we started to eat things that weren't, we didn't eat those things over there. So
right.
That's why we're predisposed to certain diseases and things like that. And I think it has a lot to do with our diets. So I think changing that has been a great habit because my mind is much clearer, and just making that parallel from being in prison, right? Like I ate better when I was in prison. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do all the things that you do when you're out, and then coming home and then kind of getting back into eating the things that I thought I missed and stuff like that. I started to feel like, well, where was that energy I had when I first walked out the door versus where I'm at now? Right. So I think eating is the business.
Speaking of walking out the door, describe how you felt the day you left prison.
It was like it was a bad dream. I felt like it went so fast because I was, like I said, I was in there reading and, doing all the things that when they finally opened the door, yeah, it was kind of surreal. Like it was like, when I'm literally about to walk out, it was almost like they made a mistake. You know what I'm saying? Like they're going to keep me. But then, when I walked out and I fell right back in. I got a chance to sleep in my bed. And when I woke up, it was like I never went to prison. It was like a bad dream. Like what? Like literally like, I had a bad dream. I went to prison. Right. It was like that. Were there any changes like to the world or to like the environment that you picked up on right away? Yeah, the phone. The phone. Like so while I was in prison, and this is why I knew kind of like what I was thinking about what ConCreates would be something, is because I had like a issue with my heart that kind of stemmed from swallowing the balloon, right? And I had this allergic reaction that caused my heart to start beating irregularly. So they actually sent me to an outside doctor. And so you got to remember, like, I'm in prison for X amount of years. I haven't seen the world, right? You know what I mean? So to get in the car and go to this doctor's office, I mean, I seen homeless people with cell phones. Like it blew my mind. It was like, okay, so I have to do something that is going to have to be targeted to this thing, because that's where everybody's face is, right? I mean, there's people walking in the middle of the street and they haven't looked up yet, and I'm like, yo, they could have got hit by a car. So with that being said, I thought about, and then when I came home and saw, hey, some of these websites that I've been to on my phone, I'm now seeing ads in games that I'm playing on my phone or whatnot. So it kind of gave me the understanding, like, retargeting and marketing is really like the direction that I wanted to take it. Yeah, interesting, fascinating. Now we're going to talk about books. We're big readers on the show. I know you're a big reader. I really admire that in you. If there was 1, 2, or 3 books you feel, and since you're such a big reader, we can do a couple more, that you feel people should stop what they're doing right away and start to read them immediately, what books would you recommend? The Process of I.
Okay. I have that one down here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, The Process of I, Emily Morosian. That's the book that like really just changed my perspective. I love it because it's an easy read. It's like 182 pages of just gold. It comes from a really, really like raw and just really real space. You know, it gives you an opportunity. This is where like the self-reflection aspect comes in, because it gives you the ability to kind of look at how you affect your environment and how what you're thinking, and it's just a great book. So The Process of I is great. And then the person who edited that book actually edited one of my books. So she was actually on one of my list of people to contact when I came home. So I found her on social media, talked to her, we ended up becoming friends. So I'm not promoting it because it's my friend. It's literally like one of my favorite books.
Yeah, we believe you.
The Jewish Phenomenon is a really powerful book for me because I love the way it kind of just shows like the tribal mentality, like the master plan like that the Jewish people had after like the Holocaust, and it kind of gives you that perspective of like, yo, like your kids are gonna marry my kids, and you know, you don't want to let us, you know, go to your schools, we're gonna build our own. Or you don't want us to be doctors in your hospitals, we're gonna start our own hospitals. Oh, you won't give us loans, we're gonna start our own banks. So I really like that like book a lot for that particular reason. Thick Face Black Heart is another one of my favorite books. I like the standpoint of, you know, separating emotion from business and really, you know, the negotiations and, you know, all that part. So from a business standpoint, I really like that book. That's my I'll say Charisma Code too.
Got it. Okay.
Charisma Code is a good book.
Appreciate it. We'll add those to the show notes for sure. Now, if we're at like a mountaintop, looking back over your life so far, and you had to pick your most proudest accomplishment so far, what comes to mind?
My proudest accomplishment, I guess it would be my son.
Okay.
Right, so the day he was born, it happened immediately, right? It was like one of those things that, you know, I thought, hey, like I went to prison, this is the thing, and I was changed because of this, but this thing, you know, changed me as well, only because I thought about my life and some of the troubles that I faced and some of the troubles that he might face, and, you know, it really just, and then to see him walking and, you know, growing and, you know, being a human and me being the person to shape the type of human or the type of man that he'll be is the greatest accomplishment for me.
Well said. Well said. You a big basketball fan? Baseball?
Basketball more than baseball.
Who's your favorite team? Lakers?
Yeah, definitely a Lakers fan.
So Lakers fan. So we're gonna go to Staples Center,
Okay.
and they're gonna announce that Vincent's coming out to the court, part of the starting five. What song is playing?
What song is playing? Oh wow! I don't think I saw that question. I don't think I saw that question. What song is playing when I walk out onto the court? I don't know. Maybe DJ Khaled. All I do is win.
All right, that works.
You know,
That works. Love it.
I can hear that.
Cool. Tell the people how they can get in touch with you on social media, website, all that information.
Definitely. So the website is ConCreates.com. That's ConCreates.com. The social media handles for that are ConCreates as well, like at ConCreates, but ConCreates is spelled with an 8. So that's ConCre8TES. And that's across all platforms. And me personally, I am Vincent Bragg is my social media handles, and then LinkedIn. I don't know what the actual link is, but you can just type in Vincent Bragg and find me there.
I'll link all those in the show notes as well. And then before I ask the final question, I just want to say thank you for appearing on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I respect your journey to the utmost. I respect your courage, the fact that you just think outside the box continuously, even while you're in prison, and you're here helping people. And I really admire that. So I appreciate that. I want to see you keep going. Definitely going to keep in touch. Just keep doing it. And so what I do is we let the guests take us home with any last minute words of wisdom and advice.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you thank you again and take us home.
Well, I mean, you kind of already stole my thunder because I was gonna say if you want to go somewhere, if you want to go fast, right? I was gonna use that quote. So you kind of took the wind out of my sail. But if I would leave the viewers or the listeners with any words of wisdom, I would just say find the humanity in people. Find the humanity in everything that you do, and I think that will serve you as a guiding light or a beacon to find a true purpose, is to find the humanity in that.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cool.